Write in the comments where you are watching from and at what time, so I can get to know you better. To support the channel for free, don't forget to subscribe and like. There are records that don't just document history, they erase it. Tonight, we unseal a file that was never meant to exist. The suppressed case of Archive Entry 734B. The incident report with missing pages. Write in the comments where you are watching from and at what time, so I can get to know you better. To support the channel for free, don't forget to subscribe and like. Some records are not missing, they are removed. Welcome back to the Obsidian Archive. Tonight we descend into the heart of institutional memory, a place where history is not just written, but curated, controlled, and sometimes surgically altered. We are talking about the monolithic structures that house our collective past, the National Archives. These are fortresses of fact, governed by rigid protocols and meticulous order. Every document has a place, every entry a corresponding log. It is a system designed to be infallible, a perfect record of our journey through time. But what happens when that system reveals a flaw? Not a mistake, not a simple misfiling, but a deliberate, impossible void. This is the story of an anomaly, a ghost in the machine, centered around a single folder in the deepest, most secure vault of the National Repository of Classified Records. The repository itself is a brutalist masterpiece of concrete and steel, designed to withstand any catastrophe, natural or man-made. Inside, the air is cold, dry, and smells of aging paper and ozone. It is a silent world where the only sounds are the hum of climate control systems and the soft footsteps of vetted archivists on polished floors. In this temple of information, every item is tracked with obsessive precision. To move a file requires a requisition form, 2 signatures, and a log entry in 3 separate ledgers. Nothing is ever truly lost. Which is why, in 2003, during a massive digitization project, a junior technician flagged a file that shouldn't exist. The file was designated 734B. The logbook showed it was part of a larger collection, Series 734, related to atmospheric research from the late 1950s. But while files 734A and 734C were present and accounted for, 734B was different. The folder was there, a brittle manila sleeve tied with faded red string. The catalog card, typed on a vintage machine, listed its contents as pages 1 through 28. But inside, there were only pages 1 through 5 and 24 through 28. The pages in between, 6 through 23, were not torn out. There was no stubble of ripped paper, no sign of forced removal. They were simply gone. More unnervingly, the catalog card itself showed signs of microscopic alteration. Under forensic analysis, it was revealed that the original entry had been pages 1 through 28. It had been chemically treated, the ink lifted, and a new entry typed over it, listing only the pages that remained. The forgery was perfect, undetectable to the naked eye. This wasn't a case of missing pages. This was an attempt to erase the memory that those pages had ever existed. An act of surgical precision, violating every protocol of the archive. An anomaly that suggested a power capable of altering the past, not just by hiding it, but by rewriting its very structure. The question wasn't just what was on those pages, but who had the authority to perform such an archival amputation, and why? The remaining pages of File 734B do not offer comfort. They only deepen the abyss. What little information is left is a masterclass in obfuscation, a tapestry woven with black ink. These are not simple documents. They are artifacts of a secret. The paper is a heavy, high RAG content stock, reserved for documents of the highest importance, brittle with age but unnervingly well preserved. The first few pages consist of meteorological data, but it's unlike any standard report. They list barometric pressures and radiation readings from an unspecified location in the Nevada desert, dated October 1957. The numbers are anomalous, spiking to levels that defy conventional explanation. Tucked into the margins are handwritten notes in a precise, almost architectural script. Phrases like non-uniform temporal decay and acoustic resonance exceeding theoretical limits are circled. Then comes the redaction. From page 4 onwards, the document becomes a battlefield between information and concealment. Entire paragraphs are obliterated by thick, glossy black bars. The redactions are not haphazard. They are strategically placed, leaving behind a skeleton of disconnected words. We can read phrases like, "The object, hereafter referred to as the artifact, showed no signs of terrestrial origin," followed by a full page of black ink. Another section reads, "Auditory hallucinations, reported by all personnel within a 5-mile radius, consistent descriptions of a discordant melody." The final surviving pages before the gap, pages 24 through 28, are even more cryptic. They appear to be preliminary psychological evaluations of the personnel involved. Names, ranks, and service numbers are all redacted, but the summaries are chilling. Subject A exhibits acute paranoia, speaks of a shattered sky and the sound of glass. Subject B has entered a catatonic state, broken only by the repeated drawing of a complex geometric pattern. A single photograph is paper-clipped to the back of page 28. It's a grainy, overexposed black and white image of the desert floor. In the center is a crater, but it's not from an explosion. The edges are too clean, too perfect, as if a giant core sample was simply lifted from the earth. There is no debris, no blast marks, just a perfect, dark circle of missing ground. Beneath the photo, a single typed line has escaped the censor's pen. The absence of material is as significant as the presence. The missing 18 pages sit conceptually in the center of this narrative. They must contain the what and the why. They are the bridge between an anomalous event in the desert and the psychological collapse of those who witnessed it. Whoever removed them didn't just hide a secret. They removed the event itself, leaving only the baffling before and after, a cause and effect, with the cause surgically excised. This file is not a report, it's a warning, and its missing heart is the most terrifying part of the message. A record is only as secure as its keeper. And the keeper of file 734B was a man named Dr. Aris Thorne. For 30 years, Thorne was the chief archivist of the National Repository, a man described by his few colleagues as less of a librarian and more of a high priest. He was meticulous, solitary, and fiercely protective of the records under his charge. He believed that an archive was a sacred trust, a promise to the future that the past would not be forgotten or distorted. His colleagues, in hushed interviews decades later, remember him as a man who could locate any document from memory among the hundreds of miles of shelving. He was the institutional memory personified. And on the morning of November the 1st, 1988, he vanished. His disappearance was as clean and precise as the anomaly in file 734B. There was no sign of a struggle at his Spartan apartment, no frantic note. His car was in its designated parking spot at the repository. He simply ceased to exist. The official investigation was cursory, concluding that the 58-year-old, a man with no family and few friends, had simply walked away from his life. But those who knew him called this absurd. Thorne was wedded to the archive. Leaving it would have been like a priest abandoning his faith. The last known record of Aris Thorne is a checkout log, signed in his own elegant cursive, dated October 31st, 1988. The item he requested from the deepest vault, sublevel Gamma, was File 734B. He was the last person to ever officially handle it. In the weeks leading up to his disappearance, his assistant, a woman named Eleanor Vance, noted a change. Thorne, normally a creature of unwavering routine, became erratic. He would work late into the night, often behind the locked door of his office. Vance recalled seeing him through the reinforced glass, not working, but staring intently at a single folder on his desk, the same manila folder we now know as 734B. He appeared agitated, sometimes muttering to himself. He began complaining of headaches and a persistent, low-frequency hum that no one else could hear. The police search of his apartment found it eerily sterile. His clothes were in the closet, his food in the pantry, but every personal paper, every research note, every diary, and every calendar had been removed. His life's work, outside of the archive, had been wiped clean. The only thing out of place was a book left open on his bedside table, a collection of poems by Borges, open to a page containing the short story, The Library of Babel. A single passage was underlined in red ink. The certainty that everything has been written negates us or turns us into phantoms. Did Thorne discover the truth within the missing pages of File 734B? A truth so profound or so dangerous that it forced him to flee? Or was he the one who removed the pages, excising the record as a final, desperate act of preservation? Or perhaps the darkest possibility is the most likely, that the same shadowy force that redacted the file and rewrote the catalog card simply redacted him. History is not always found in official documents. Sometimes it lingers in the memories of those who exist in the periphery, the silent observers who see everything because they are trained to be invisible. Our final piece of this puzzle comes from such a source. A man named Samuel Jones, who served as a night janitor at the National Repository for over 40 years. His account, given to a historical researcher shortly before his death in 2010, was dismissed as the ramblings of an old man. But in the context of File 734B and the vanishing of Dr. Thorne, his words paint a chilling picture. Samuel worked the midnight shift. His job was to clean the silent, empty halls and offices of the repository. He knew the building's rhythms, its groans and whispers, better than anyone. In his testimony, he spoke of the last week of October 1988 with perfect clarity. He described seeing Dr. Thorne not as the calm, composed man he was during the day, but as a haunted man, a ghost, walking his own halls. Samuel recalled seeing Thorne in the main reading room long after everyone else had gone home, surrounded not by books, but by what looked like astronomical charts and complex diagrams he had drawn by hand on a large chalkboard. The janitor remembered mopping the floors outside sub-level Gamma and seeing men who did not belong. They were not archivists. They wore dark, impeccably tailored suits that seemed out of place in the dusty environment. They never spoke to him, never even acknowledged his presence, and they carried slender, locked briefcases. They visited late, always after midnight, and always went directly to Dr. Thorne's office. The night of October 31st, Halloween, was the last time Samuel saw any of them. He was waxing the floor in the corridor near the executive offices when he heard a raised voice from behind Thorne's door. It was Thorne's voice, but strained, desperate. Samuel could only make out a few words through the thick oak door. "Cannot be unread," and "the pattern is incomplete." Later that night, around 3 a.m., he saw the men in suits leave. One of them was carrying a heavy-duty canvas sack, the kind used for transporting classified documents for incineration. Dr. Thorne was not with them. The next morning, Thorne was gone. But Samuel's most disturbing recollection was what he found while emptying the trash from Thorne's office. Amidst the usual paper waste, he found a single crumpled ball of thick, high-quality paper. He smoothed it out. It was a fragment of a page, seemingly torn from a larger document. It was covered in the same precise architectural handwriting as the notes in File 734B. It wasn't a report. It was a frantic, desperate scrawl. It read, "It is not a record of an event. It is the trigger for the next one. The sequence is in the empty space, the silence between the notes. They think removing the pages saves them, but they've only armed it." Samuel Jones kept that scrap of paper, hiding it away for over 20 years. It is the only known piece of evidence that may have come from the missing pages of File 734B. A message from a vanished archivist suggesting the file is not a history, but a weapon. And the most dangerous part is the one that is missing. Write in the comments where you are watching from and at what time, so I can get to know you better. To support the channel for free, don't forget to subscribe and like. Some doors, once opened, can never be closed again. Welcome back to the Obsidian Archive. In our last chapter, we were left with nothing but shadows and ink. Document 734, the core of our investigation, was a phantom, a collection of missing pages, blacked-out paragraphs, and cryptic marginalia. It was a dead end, a monument to secrecy. For weeks, our team stared at these digital scans, running them through every conceivable analysis program. We enhanced, inverted, and cross-referenced, but the heavy hand of the censor was absolute. The ink was a void, absorbing all attempts to penetrate it. It felt like we were chasing a ghost through a hall of mirrors. But in the world of classified history, patience is not just a virtue. It is the only tool that can break the lock. It happened on a Tuesday, deep into the night, under the sterile hum of the server room. An analyst, fueled by coffee and obsession, was running a new spectral imaging algorithm on a low-resolution scan of page 12. This page was particularly brutal, a solid block of redaction with only a few prepositions like "the" and "at" left untouched. The algorithm was designed to detect minute variations in paper density and ink absorption, a digital long shot. For hours, it rendered nothing. Then a flicker. A notification pinged, almost apologetically. The system had isolated a microscopic area where the redaction ink had been applied unevenly. Perhaps the pen was running dry, or the sensor was momentarily distracted. Beneath this flaw, the algorithm pieced together a ghost of the original text. After hours of painstaking digital reconstruction, a single, coherent sentence emerged from the black void. It was 5 words. Just 5 words that changed everything. 5 words that provided the first solid breadcrumb in a trail that had been cold for over 50 years. The sentence read, "Containment failed at Coldwater Level 3. Suddenly we had a name, Coldwater, and we had an event, a containment failure. The sentence was chillingly devoid of context. Containment of what? What was Level 3? And what was cold water? The archive entry with the missing pages was no longer just a bureaucratic curiosity. It was now pointing to a specific place in a specific disaster. This wasn't just about missing information anymore, this was about a cover-up. The redactions weren't just hiding methods or names, they were hiding an event. Something that went wrong at a place called Cold Water. Our entire investigation pivoted on this single, unredacted sentence. We now had a destination. We had to find the cold water facility and uncover what was contained there, what failed, and why every subsequent page of this file was systematically removed or destroyed. The void had given us a clue, and it was leading us somewhere very, very cold. The name Cold Water was a key, but the lock was buried under decades of deliberate obfuscation. Initial searches yielded nothing. There was no Cold Water Institute in any public federal registry. No declassified projects bore the name. It was a ghost. We turned to satellite cartography, cross-referencing old survey maps from the mid-20th century with modern geological data, looking for anomalies, undocumented structures in remote locations, access roads that led to nowhere. We focused on regions with peculiar electromagnetic readings or unexplained environmental data, theorizing that a research facility involved in containment might have left a footprint, however faint. After weeks of digital archaeology, we found it. Tucked away in the desolate, wind-swept expanse of the Alaskan interior, hundreds of miles from any settlement, was a cluster of decaying structures. It was never officially named the Cold Water Institute. Its public designation was Meteorological Survey Outpost 17, a benign name for a facility of its size and complexity. Official records, the few that exist, state it was a weather monitoring station operational from 1958 to 1965, tasked with studying Arctic atmospheric phenomena. But the records were suspiciously thin. The construction budget was astronomically high for a simple weather station, and the personnel manifests listed physicists and biologists, not meteorologists. It was a lie, a carefully constructed facade to hide its true purpose. Using declassified satellite imagery from the Corona program in the 1960s, we could see the outpost in its prime. It was a sprawling complex, far larger than any weather station would require. There were reinforced bunkers, a dedicated power plant, and a landing strip capable of handling heavy cargo planes. Most unnervingly, there was a central, windowless structure, built partially underground, a design consistent with high security containment. This was it. This was the place from the archive entry. This was Cold Water. Today, the outpost is a ruin, slowly being reclaimed by the unforgiving Arctic wilderness. The buildings are skeletal, their metal skins peeled back by relentless winds, revealing concrete bones. Getting there is impossible for us, a logistical and financial nightmare. But we can explore it digitally, through drone footage taken by Arctic explorers and the few urban explorers who dared to make the treacherous journey. Their footage paints a haunting picture: corridors filled with snowdrifts, laboratories with equipment smashed and strewn across the floor, and everywhere, a sense of hurried, panicked evacuation. Whatever happened here, it happened fast. The official story is that the project was decommissioned due to budget cuts and the extreme operational costs. But the evidence left behind tells a different story. It wasn't decommissioned, it was abandoned. And as we analyzed the layout, we began to understand that the true secrets of Cold Water were not in the buildings we could see, but in the ones we couldn't. Finding the location of Coldwater was a victory, but it raised more questions than it answered. The ruins were a silent testament to a forgotten failure. But what was the nature of that failure? The key, we believed, lay in the architecture of the facility itself. The surface structures were a decoy, we were sure of it. The real work, the work that required containment, happened below ground. Our next objective was to find the blueprints. We filed a barrage of Freedom of Information Act requests, citing the public designation Meteorological Survey Outpost 17. Most were denied, citing national security exemptions decades after the facility was closed. It was another wall. But one request, sent to a forgotten subdepartment of the Army Corps of Engineers, struck gold. We received a canister of poorly preserved microfilm. It was labeled Auxiliary Structures and Geological Surveys, Site 17. It seemed innocuous, but when we scanned and digitized the fragile film, we realized what we had. It was a complete set of blueprints, not for the weather station, but for the entire subterranean complex beneath it. The documents were a revelation. They detailed a massive, multi-level underground facility. Level 1 was designated for personnel and primary labs. Level 2 housed advanced physics equipment and what was labeled the generator core. But it was Level 3 that drew our attention. It was the deepest, most isolated section, accessible only by a single, heavily reinforced service elevator. The blueprints labeled this area simply as the Specimen Hub. This was the Coldwater Level 3 from the unredacted sentence. But as we overlaid the blueprints with geological surveys and the known layout from the drone footage, we found alarming discrepancies. Entire sections on the blueprints were marked with a different draftsman's handwriting, clearly later additions. These sections didn't exist on the main architectural plans. They were hidden corridors, undocumented rooms, and entire sub-levels branching off from the official layout. One such corridor extended from the Specimen Hub on Level 3, leading to a large, circular chamber that was not on any other official plan. It was a secret, buried deep within another secret. We used 3D modeling software to reconstruct the entire facility based on these composite blueprints. Our virtual walkthrough was terrifying. We navigated claustrophobic corridors that shouldn't exist, passing through sealed doorways into rooms with no designated purpose. The architecture spoke of paranoia and extreme secrecy. These were not just service tunnels. They were designed for observation, for quarantine, for quick isolation. They were corridors built to watch and to contain whatever was being held in the Specimen Hub. The missing pages of the archive entry were beginning to take shape, not as words, but as concrete and steel, a hidden labyrinth designed to imprison something terrifying. The blueprints gave us the geography of the secret, but the human element was missing. What was it like to be there when containment failed? What did the scientists see? The archive entry, our guiding document, had one final clue. A small annotation on the redacted page 12, missed in our initial analysis, read, "See audio log C17AL7, final entry." It was another long shot. Finding a specific audio reel from a defunct clandestine project 60 years ago seemed impossible. Most of this material is either systematically destroyed or locked away in classified vaults far beyond our reach. We began scouring databases of government auctions, looking for surplus equipment sales from the 1960s and 70s. Often, when bases are decommissioned, non-sensitive material is sold off in bulk lots. Tucked away in one of these lots sold to a radio hobbyist in 1971 and forgotten in his attic, was a crate of magnetic tapes from Alaska. After months of searching and contacting collectors, we found him. He had the crate, and inside, covered in dust, was a reel labeled C17AL7. The tape was in poor condition, brittle and degraded. Playing it was a risk. It could disintegrate. Our audio engineer spent a week carefully treating and digitizing the reel. What came out was mostly static, a hiss of dead air that stretched for nearly 20 minutes. We almost gave up. But then, by applying a series of advanced noise cancellation filters, we began to isolate fragments of sound buried deep within the noise. A voice, distant alarms, the groan of stressed metal, and then a clear transmission. Voice 1. Is this thing on? Mayday, mayday. This is Dr. Aris Thorne, Level 3. Containment has failed. I repeat, containment has failed. It's out of the hub. The lockdown sequence, it didn't hold. The primary door it's bent. Something bent the primary door. Voice 1. Oh God. It's in the corridor. We can hear it. It's not biological. Not in the way we understood. The frequency. It's changing the frequency of the air itself. The lights are... Voice 2. Seal the elevator. Now. Voice 1. We can't. It's coming. We were wrong. It doesn't just absorb energy. It wears the empty space. We opened a door to... This was the final entry. This was the event the missing pages were meant to hide forever. A containment failure of something incomprehensible. Something that could bend a reinforced steel door and manipulate physical space. Dr. Aris Thorne's final words were not a scientific observation, but a terrified warning. The archive entry wasn't just a cover-up of a failed experiment. It was the final testament of the people who witnessed the moment a hole was punched in our reality and something else came through. Write in the comments where you are watching from and at what time, so I can get to know you better. To support the channel for free, don't forget to subscribe and like. Some doors, once opened, can never be closed again. The document in my hands, designated Archive Entry 734, felt less like a record and more like a wound. Its core, its most vital organs, had been surgically removed, leaving behind only scarred edges and the ghost of a story. But a ghost is still a presence, and the fragments left behind, mentions of unusual seismic activity, bioluminescent flora, and a chillingly sterile reference to asset containment failure, were not random. They were breadcrumbs. The question was, where did they lead? My investigation began in the digital catacombs of public records, cross-referencing every term, every date, every redacted name against national and international disappearance databases. For weeks, the work was a slow, grinding process of elimination. Hundreds of cases, thousands of dead ends. The world is full of people who vanish, swallowed by mundane tragedies or the simple desire to be gone. But I wasn't looking for the mundane. I was looking for the echo of Entry 734. The first match was almost imperceptible. Dr. Aris Thorne, a brilliant but eccentric geologist, vanished from his remote research outpost in the Yukon in 1988. The official report cited a sudden blizzard, a tragic accident. But his last radio transmission, a transcript of which I found buried in a university's archived server, spoke of the ground humming and the snow glowing with a soft blue light. It was a faint connection, but it was there. Bioluminescence, unusual seismic activity. The second case was louder. The entire Ilara research team, a group of 5 botanists, disappeared from a protected biosphere reserve in the Amazon rainforest in 1997. Their equipment was found intact, their tents undisturbed. Their final log entry, however, was anything but normal. It described the discovery of a new species of fungus that reacted to sound, pulsing with light. The final sentence was cut off. It's not just reacting, it's... The official inquiry was shut down by the host country's government, citing national security. Another dead end. But the pattern was growing stronger. Then came the case of the freighter, the Oracle, which vanished without a distress call in the Pacific Ocean in 2005. Its last known coordinates placed it over the Mariana Trench. A week before it disappeared, the ship's communications officer sent a private email to his wife describing how the crew was mesmerized by strange lights rising from the depths at night. He called them deep-sea auroras, a geologist in the Yukon, botanists in the Amazon, sailors in the Pacific. On the surface, they were utterly disconnected. Different decades, different disciplines, different corners of the globe. But when I plotted their last known locations on a map, a terrifying symmetry emerged. They formed a near-perfect triangle with an unknown point of convergence somewhere in the desolate expanse of the Siberian tundra. The common threads were undeniable: unexplained lights, anomalous energy readings, and sudden, complete disappearances that were quickly and quietly closed by authorities. Each case was a standalone tragedy, but viewed through the lens of Archive Entry 734, they became a sequence, a recurring event. Something was happening, or had been happening, for decades. The missing pages of that file didn't just contain a single incident report. I was becoming convinced they held the key, the Rosetta Stone that translated these disparate tragedies into a single, coherent, and horrifying narrative. Someone had gone to great lengths to ensure no one ever connected these dots. By removing the pages, they hadn't erased the story. They had merely scattered the chapters. Every conspiracy, every cover-up, is built upon a foundation of plausible deniability. It's a simple, almost elegant structure of lies designed to comfort the public and dismiss the curious. And for the most prominent case connected to our growing pattern, the 1988 disappearance of Dr. Aris Thorne, the official story was a masterclass in mundane misdirection. The official statement, released by a joint U.S.-Canadian task force and filed away to be forgotten, was just 2 pages long. It concluded that Dr. Thorne, likely disoriented by a sudden and unforecasted polar vortex, wandered from his research station and succumbed to the elements. The humming, he reported, was attributed to seismic-induced ice fracturing, and the glowing snow was dismissed as a rare atmospheric phenomenon known as St. Elmo's fire, interacting with a high-altitude weather balloon that had drifted off course. A weather balloon. It's the eternal scapegoat, the punchline to a joke that isn't funny. It's the explanation you use when you have no intention of actually explaining anything. But when you dig into the official report, the foundation of this lie begins to crack. The meteorological data for that night showed no polar vortex. In fact, it was an unusually calm and clear night. Interviews with local Arctic pilots confirmed this. There was no storm. Furthermore, 3 separate geophysicists I consulted, who reviewed Thorne's own seismic data logs, stated that ice fracturing produces a sharp, high-frequency cracking sound, not the low, resonant hum he described. A hum more consistent with powerful, low-frequency electromagnetic radiation. And the weather balloon? Records from the North American Aerospace Defense Command, obtained through a Freedom of Information Act request, showed no registered balloon launches, military or civilian, in that quadrant for a 72-hour period surrounding his disappearance. The official story wasn't just inaccurate. It was a fabrication, hastily assembled from convenient scientific terminology. This is where we return to Archive Entry 734. On the third surviving page, in a section detailing equipment protocols, there is a footnote. Footnote C9. It reads, "In the event of a Level 4 containment failure, all public-facing inquiries are to be redirected via Protocol Silver Ash." Protocol Silver Ash. It sounds official, doesn't it? Authoritative. I searched for any mention of it in every declassified government manual I could find. It doesn't exist. It's a ghost. But it implies a pre-planned strategy, a script to be followed when things go wrong. The weather balloon wasn't an explanation. It was an activation of that protocol. It was a lie, kept on a shelf, waiting to be used. The missing pages of Entry 734, I believe, contained the real report from the Thorne incident, or one just like it. They detailed what truly happened in that remote Yukon outpost. They contained data so alarming, so contrary to our understanding of the world, that it had to be excised. It was replaced with a story of a lost scientist and a faulty balloon. A sad but simple tragedy. They were counting on no one looking closer. They were counting on no one finding the other cases. They were counting on the lie being enough. The physical document of Archive Entry 734 was a dead end. Its pages were gone, its secrets seemingly lost forever. But the author of a report that required such drastic censorship must have known they were in danger. They must have anticipated that their work would be suppressed. This thought led me to a man who lives in a world of secrets, a man who sees language not as a tool for communication, but as a battlefield. He is a former NSA cryptographer who now works as a private consultant, a digital ghost who requested his identity be completely obscured. I will call him Helios. I sent him high-resolution scans of the surviving pages, every margin, every coffee stain, every staple hole. I expected him to find nothing. I was wrong. For 2 weeks, there was silence. Then, an encrypted message arrived. They used a dual-layer obfuscation. It's brilliant and terrifying. Helios explained that the original author hadn't just written a report. They had woven a hidden message into the very fabric of the document itself. It wasn't a simple cipher. It was steganography of the highest order. The first layer was in the typewriter font. Certain letters, A, R, T, had microscopic imperfections, subtle variations from the other keys. To a casual reader, it was invisible. But when analyzed, these flawed letters, when read in sequence across all the remaining pages, spelled out a repeating phrase: "Listen to the static." It was a clue pointing to the second layer of the code. The second layer was even more ingenious. Helios discovered faint, almost invisible indentations in the margins, pressure marks from a pen writing on a sheet of paper that had been laid on top of the original document. Using advanced imaging techniques, he was able to reconstruct the ghostwriting. It wasn't text. It was a sequence of numbers, a long, seemingly random string. But it wasn't random. "Listen to the static," the first message said. Helios realized the numbers corresponded to frequencies and timestamps. They were coordinates for a specific recording of shortwave radio static. He found the corresponding archival recording from a university's atmospheric research project, captured on the exact date the archive entry was filed. When he filtered the static using the numbers from the margins as a key, a voice emerged. It was distorted, weak, and laced with panic. It was a fragmented message, broken by bursts of noise, but it was unmistakable. Entry is a lie. They didn't contain it. It's a call, a signal. The disappearances are not random. They are harvests. Triangulation is the key. The pattern is a map. They don't come from above. They come from below. Page 5 contains the coordinates. God help us. The message cut out. A harvest. The word echoed in the silence, changing everything. The missing pages weren't just a cover-up of a failed experiment. They were hiding a truth, a monstrous reality. And page 5, one of the missing, contained the coordinates, the location of the harvest. The author of Archive Entry 734 hadn't just filed a report. They had sent a message in a bottle, thrown into an ocean of bureaucracy, praying someone would one day have the tools to read it. We had just heard their ghost. The cryptographer's discovery was a paradigm shift. We had moved from a cold case investigation to something far more immediate and dangerous. The fragmented message from the static was a testament to a truth someone was willing to kill or die for. But it was still incomplete. We had a warning, but we lacked the final critical piece of information, the coordinates from the missing page 5. The trail had gone cold once more, and a new kind of fear began to set in. The fear of knowing you are on the verge of a terrible truth, but being unable to reach it. It was then that my methods changed. I was no longer just an investigator. I had to become a signal myself. On secure, encrypted forums deep within the dark web, places frequented by whistleblowers, ex-intelligence officers, and conspiracy realists, I began asking questions. I didn't mention Entry 734 or harvests. I used the code names and phrases I had uncovered. Protocol Silver Ash. Listen to the static. It was a shot in the dark, a message in a bottle of my own. For a month, there was nothing but silence and the usual noise of the web. I was ready to give up. Then an email appeared in my encrypted inbox. It was from a sender with no name, no address, routed through a dozen anonymous servers. The subject line contained a single word: echo. The body of the message was short and chilling. You are digging in a graveyard you don't understand. The file was left incomplete as a warning, not a puzzle. Stop now. I responded with one question. Prove you know what I'm looking for. The reply came 12 hours later. Page 5. Longitude/latitude. The author miscalculated the resonance frequency. The error was by a factor of pi. That is why the oracle was lost. It was an accident. The others were not. My blood ran cold. The oracle, the freighter, that vanished over the Mariana Trench. It was one of the cases in my pattern, but I had never published or shared my research on it with anyone. Only someone with access to the original complete file could know the connection. And the detail about the miscalculation, it was specific, technical, and utterly terrifying. This was no prank. This was a second source, a leaker, an individual on the inside who was watching me. My anonymous source was real. I pushed for more. I won't stop. The message in the static mentioned harvests. What are they? The final reply came almost immediately, and it was the last I ever received from Echo. It's not a harvest. It's a broadcast, a signal to see who is listening. And now, they have heard you. I am sending you a single encrypted file. It is not page 5. It is a key. Use it to understand what you are truly dealing with. I cannot contact you again. They are hunting me now, too. Goodbye. Attached was a heavily encrypted file. The password was, as instructed, Echo. Inside was not a document, but a single audio clip. It was a sound file just 30 seconds long of a low, resonant hum. The same hum Dr. Thorne described in the Yukon, the same frequency Helios had used to decode the message in the static. But this time, it wasn't a recording. It was clean, raw, and powerful. And beneath it, almost too faint to hear, was something else. A rhythmic, pulsing beat, like a colossal heart, beating slowly, deep within the earth. I had my key, and I finally understood. This wasn't a cover-up of a human error. It was the quarantine of a phenomenon that was never ours to control. Write in the comments where you are watching from and at what time, so I can get to know you better. To support the channel for free, don't forget to subscribe and like. Some doors are closed not to keep you out, but to keep something else in. We return to Archive Entry 734, the file that is more whole than page, a testament to a story deliberately erased. The official record ends abruptly, the logs of the Arctic research team at Outpost Borealis ceasing mid-sentence. But archives, like old houses, have their secrets. Tucked within the brittle yellowed file folder, not stapled or cataloged but slipped between the binding and the back cover, a single photograph was found by a junior archivist in 1998. It was an anomaly, an undocumented ghost in the machine. The photograph itself is a small, monochrome rectangle, its corners softened by time, its surface marred by a faint chemical stain. It depicts a vast, featureless expanse of snow, the kind of blinding white void that can swallow a person whole. The horizon is a blurry suggestion, lost in a flurry of what appears to be falling snow or perhaps just film grain. But it's the center of the image that commands and chills the viewer. There, standing against the oppressive emptiness, is a figure. It's too distant to make out features, a mere silhouette against the snow. It's tall, unnaturally so, with limbs that seem just slightly too long, angled in a way that feels fundamentally wrong. It isn't walking or moving, it's simply there, a static interruption in the landscape. The official inventory for Entry 734 lists no photographic evidence, not a single frame. This picture, therefore, should not exist. Its clandestine placement suggests it was hidden, either by someone trying to preserve a truth or by someone who failed to purge every last trace of it. Who took this picture? The log entries, the pages we do have, speak of dwindling supplies and equipment malfunctions, but they also contain increasingly frantic mentions of static on the horizon and things that walk where nothing should. Was this what they were seeing? A physical entity? Or was it, as team psychologist Dr. Eva Rostova suggested in her final legible report, a shared hallucination brought on by extreme isolation and sensory deprivation? The photograph argues against hallucination. It feels cold, real, a captured moment of high strangeness. The very texture of the print, the way the light is captured, feels authentic to the period. Analysts have noted the figure casts a faint shadow, but the shadow seems to fall at an impossible angle relative to the dim, ambient light of an overcast Arctic day. It's another detail that doesn't fit, another piece of a puzzle whose most important parts, the missing pages, are gone forever. This photograph is our only surviving image from Outpost Borealis. It is the ghost that haunts Archive Entry 734, a silent witness to the events that were so terrifying, so paradigm-shifting, that someone felt the only solution was to tear the story from history itself. To understand what happened at Outpost Borealis, we must understand the minds that were there to witness it. The personnel files, attached as appendices to Archive Entry 734, are themselves heavily redacted, but they paint a fragmented portrait of a team selected for resilience, intelligence, and psychological fortitude. These were not amateurs. Leading the expedition was Dr. Aris Thorne, a veteran geologist with 3 prior polar missions under his belt. His evaluations speak of a man with unflappable resolve and a grounding presence. Yet his final log entries, the ones that survive, are filled with erratic notations about the ice singing and the sun feeling wrong. Then there was Dr. Lena Petrova, the team's physician and psychologist. Her role was to monitor the crew's mental state, a cruel irony given that her own notes betray a slow, creeping dread. An early entry reads, "The isolation is absolute, but the feeling of being watched is pervasive," a contradiction of the soul. By the final week, her clinical language dissolves into raw fear, with references to infectious nightmares and a cognitive contaminant spreading through the station. She mentions a complete breakdown in team cohesion, with 2 members, whose names are completely blacked out, refusing to leave their quarters. We also have fragments from the file of Samuel Sam Jones, the communications technician. Described as jovial and pragmatic, his job was the team's only link to the outside world. His reports detail the escalating failure of his equipment, which he initially attributes to solar flares. But his last recovered message is not a technical report. It's a single desperate sentence sent over a channel thought to be dead. It's not static, it's a voice. It knows our names. Each profile tells the same story, a gradual erosion of reality. These were highly trained professionals, screened for their ability to withstand the exact pressures they were facing. So what broke them? The missing pages of the archive entry likely hold the answer. They would contain Dr. Petrova's final detailed assessments, Thorne's last geological readings, and the full context of Sam's terrifying message. Without them, we are left to speculate. Was it a simple case of cabin fever on an unprecedented scale? Or did they encounter an external stimulus, something so alien to human experience that it shattered their perception of the world? The official inquiry, what little of it is declassified, concluded with environmental stress and collective psychosis. A convenient, tidy explanation. But it fails to account for the photograph. It fails to account for the impossible shadows. And it fails to explain why the most critical pages of the report, the ones detailing the final 72 hours at Outpost Borealis, were meticulously excised from the record, leaving us with only the psychological wreckage of those who were lost. Science is a tool for measuring the known world. But what happens when the world itself stops following the rules? This question seems to have consumed Dr. Kenji Tanaka, the expedition's physicist. His official contributions to Archive Entry 734 are among the missing pages, but a private journal, recovered from his family years later and unofficially cross-referenced, offers a terrifying hypothesis. Dr. Tanaka was at Outpost Borealis to study anomalous magnetic field fluctuations. Initially, he believed them to be a geological curiosity. However, his journal reveals a radical shift in his thinking. He began to suspect that he wasn't observing a magnetic phenomenon, but a fundamental breakdown in physical law. He coined the term localized reality distortion, or LRD. In his notes, he theorized that the outpost was situated in a perceptual sinkhole, a bubble where causality, spatial dimensions, and even the flow of time were becoming unstable. He describes experiments where clocks would desynchronize at random, where objects would be measured at 2 different lengths simultaneously, and where compasses wouldn't just point north, but would spin violently, as if searching for a constant that was no longer there. These weren't equipment malfunctions. Tanaka meticulously details his control tests. This was the environment itself becoming incoherent. His theory posits that prolonged exposure to an LRD would have a devastating effect on the human mind, which is hardwired to exist in a stable, predictable reality. The infectious nightmares Dr. Petrova mentioned. Tanaka would argue they were glimpses into overlapping realities bleeding into their own. The figure in the snow? Not an entity, but a spatial artifact, a momentary, 3-dimensional projection from another possibility, frozen onto film. The voice on the radio that knew their names? A temporal echo? A fragment of a future or past transmission bleeding through the unstable fabric of space-time. It's a theory that borders on science fiction, but it is the only one that seems to fit all the disparate, bizarre pieces of the puzzle. The missing pages of the archive entry, we can surmise, contained Tanaka's raw data. The charts, the equations, the proof that what was happening at Outpost Borealis was not just a tragedy, but a fundamental challenge to our understanding of everything. Erasing that data wouldn't just be a cover-up. It would be an act of intellectual quarantine, an attempt to hide a truth so profound and unsettling that it could unravel the very fabric of our consensus reality. Dr. Tanaka's final journal entry is chillingly simple. The container is breached. The measurements no longer matter. Reality is not a constant. It is a suggestion, and it is being withdrawn. Every classified document has a designation, a name that hides its true purpose. For Archive Entry 734, that name we've discovered through declassified cross-referencing of budget lines was Project Chimera. This wasn't a simple research mission. Outpost Borealis wasn't built just to study magnetic fields. It was an observation post, a laboratory, and a cage, built specifically to study a naturally occurring localized reality distortion. The team, as brilliant as they were lab rats. They were sent in under a false pretext. Their every reaction, their every psychological fracture, meticulously observed from afar. Project Chimera was a clandestine government program initiated in the height of the Cold War, aiming to understand and potentially weaponize these reality distortion events. The missing pages of the archive entry didn't just contain the team's final, horrifying moments. They contained the project's parameters, its objectives, and its catastrophic failure. The figure in the snow was not an accidental byproduct. Leaked testimony from a low-level Chimera technician suggests the project's secondary phase involved attempts to stabilize and influence the LRD. They weren't just observing, they were interacting. They were trying to control the uncontrollable, to harness chaos itself. The figure in the photograph, the spatial artifact Dr. Tanaka theorized about, may have been a direct result of their tampering, a nightmarish hybrid of physical law and human intention, a chimera in the truest sense. This recontextualizes the entire tragedy. The team's descent into madness wasn't just a consequence of their environment. It was the desired data. The equipment failures weren't accidents. They may have been deliberate to increase psychological stress or to prevent the team from communicating the true nature of their work to the outside world. The missing pages were removed not just to hide a scientific anomaly, but to bury a profound ethical crime. Project Chimera represents the ultimate hubris, the belief that reality itself could be bent to human will. The fate of Dr. Thorne, Dr. Petrova, Dr. Tanaka, and the rest of the team serves as a dark testament to the consequences of that hubris. They were pushed into the abyss, and someone in a position of power ensured the abyss would not be allowed to stare back at the rest of us. Archive Entry 734 is not an incomplete record of a lost expedition. It is a carefully curated lie, a monument to a secret so dark it required the erasure of both evidence and human lives. The true horror isn't in the pages that are missing, but in the calculated, cold-blooded reason for their removal. Write in the comments where you are watching from and at what time, so I can get to know you better. To support the channel for free, don't forget to subscribe and like. Some pages are not meant to be read because what they describe is not meant to be remembered. We return to the cold, silent heart of the Municipal Archive, to the source of this entire enigma. Entry 734. For weeks, we have pieced together the life and work of Aris Thorne, a man who was more than a simple archivist. He was a guardian of history, a cartographer of time itself. But the map he was charting led him somewhere dark, somewhere off the edge of accepted reality. The final pages of his personal log, written in a frantic, almost illegible scrawl, are not just a record of his findings. They are a desperate warning, a final flare sent up from a sinking ship. The ink is smudged, not from water, but from what forensic analysts later identified as sweat, the panicked perspiration of a man who has seen something impossible. The entry is dated October 28, 1983, the day before Aris Thorne vanished from the face of the earth. It begins, "They are not memories. They are scars on the timeline. I thought I was documenting local history, trivial events, a town festival, the construction of the old mill, birth records. But the patterns don't make sense." Thorne describes what he calls temporal erosions. He found records of events that simply stopped existing, not just forgotten, but seemingly unwriting themselves from history. He references the Miller family, whose entire lineage, documented meticulously in town ledgers since the 1800s, abruptly disappears from all records predating 1950. It's as if they were retroactively erased. He writes, "It's not a cover-up, it's a consumption. Something is feeding on the narrative, on the very fabric of what was." The missing pages from Entry 734, they weren't just about the Havenwood anomaly. They were the anomaly. They contained a name, a date, a description of something that came to town. I saw it. I read it. And in reading it, I may have invited it to look back. His paranoia is palpable. He mentions the clocks in the archive running backward for brief moments, of seeing faces in the microfilm flicker into visages he didn't recognize, of a low hum that seemed to emanate from the paper itself. His final coherent sentence is chilling. "You cannot fight something that erases the battle after it's over. You cannot remember what it has taken. Burning the pages is not enough. It knows I have read them. It is coming for the memory itself. It is coming for me. The rest is a chaotic series of symbols and broken letters, as if his ability to form words was deteriorating in real time." This wasn't just a man on the verge of a breakdown. This was a man documenting his own dissolution, a final, desperate message from a reality that was actively being unwritten around him. He wasn't just an archivist who went missing. He was the first page the entity chose to tear out. When a person vanishes, they leave a void, a ghost-shaped hole in the lives of those they knew. But what happens when the town itself can't remember the person who disappeared? This is the unsettling reality in Havenwood, the sleepy town that was the backdrop for Aris Thorne's disappearance. In the weeks following October 29, 1983, state investigators descended on the town. They interviewed dozens of residents, colleagues, and acquaintances. The official report, which we obtained through a Freedom of Information Act request, is a masterclass in contradiction and confusion. It paints a picture not of a town in mourning, but a town suffering from a bizarre collective amnesia. Thorne's supervisor at the archive, a man named Gerald Fincher, told investigators he hadn't seen Elias in a few days, but couldn't recall exactly how many. He described Thorne as a quiet, diligent worker. But when pressed for specifics about their last conversation, his account became hazy, filled with phrases like, "I think we talked about the weather," and "I can't seem to place it." The owner of the diner, where Thorne ate breakfast every morning for 15 years, a woman named Martha, initially couldn't remember him at all. Only after being shown a photograph did she have a flicker of recognition, saying, "He looks familiar. Maybe. Did he pass through town once?" This was a man who had the same meal, in the same booth, every single day. His landlord claimed the apartment had been vacant for months, despite rent checks cashed in Thorne's name just a week prior. It was as if the temporal erosion Thorne wrote about was now washing over the town, scrubbing their memories of him clean. This wasn't a conspiracy of silence. It was a genuine, unnerving emptiness. The investigators' private notes reveal their growing frustration. One detective wrote, "It's like trying to nail fog to a wall. They aren't lying. They genuinely don't remember. It feels like the man was a ghost, even before he disappeared." This phenomenon extended beyond Thorne. When investigators tried to follow up on the Miller family that Thorne had mentioned in his log, they hit a dead end. No one in Havenwood had ever heard of them. There were no records, no old photographs, no distant relatives. It was a name without a history, a phantom family from a forgotten timeline. The town of Havenwood didn't just lose an archivist. It lost pieces of its own past, and it doesn't even know what's missing. The void left by Aris Thorne wasn't empty. It was filled with a strange, placid ignorance, a calm that is far more terrifying than grief. The official investigation into the disappearance of Aris Thorne was quietly closed in 1985, citing a lack of actionable evidence or leads. The final report is a thin folder, its contents sanitized for public consumption. But the unofficial case file, the raw data, tells a very different story. It's a chaotic mess of contradictory evidence, impossible timelines, and heavily redacted testimony that points not to a simple missing person case, but to an active and ongoing cover-up. Let's start with the timeline. The archive's security log, a simple sign-in sheet, shows Aris Thorne signing out at 9:15 p.m. on October 28th. However, a police officer on patrol, Officer Miller, a chilling coincidence of a name, filed a routine report noting that all the lights in the municipal building were off when he passed by at 8:30 p.m. He specifically mentioned checking the archive windows. So how could Thorne sign out from a dark, empty building over 45 minutes later? The contradictions pile up. The state forensics team found Thorne's fingerprints all over his desk, as expected. But they also found a set of unidentified prints on his personal logbook, specifically on the final, frantic entry. These prints matched no one in any database. Stranger still, the lab report notes, the prints had a bizarre quality, an unusual ridge clarity, as if they were too perfect, almost synthetic. Then there are the redactions. A key witness was a janitor who worked in the building. His initial testimony is almost entirely blacked out. Only fragments remain. We can see phrases like, "a cold that wasn't natural," the sound of tearing paper, but there was no one, and the file drawer for 700-800 was glowing. Why was this testimony, from the last person known to be in the building on the same floor as Thorne, almost completely censored? The official explanation was witness protection, but the janitor in question died of a heart attack 2 weeks after his interview. Another glaring inconsistency is the state of entry 734 itself. The official report states that the file was found with its final pages neatly removed. But crime scene photos, which we've managed to unearth, show something different. The file isn't just missing pages. The binding is warped, and the edges of the remaining pages show signs of extreme heat and chemical degradation, as if something had tried to burn the information out of existence from the inside. This wasn't a simple theft of documents. This was a meticulous, almost surgical sanitization of a historical record. The timeline doesn't match, the physical evidence is anomalous, and the witness testimony is suppressed. This isn't the file of a man who walked away. This is the file of a man who was erased. We are left where we began, with an empty space in a file. The mystery of Aris Thorne and the Havenwood anomaly is not a puzzle with a missing piece. It's a puzzle where the shape of the missing piece changes every time you look at it. The pages Thorne read, the ones he tried to warn us about, remain missing, and in their absence, speculation is all we have. What could have been written on those pages that was so dangerous it had to be excised from history itself? What did Thorne read that made him a target for something that consumes memory? Based on his final panicked entry, we can theorize. He mentioned a name, a date, and a description. Perhaps the missing pages contained the true name of the entity, a name that, once known, could be used to summon or perceive it, like a cosmic password to a horrifying reality. The date might have been the day it first arrived in Havenwood, or perhaps a prediction of a future event, a day of reckoning the town can no longer remember to prepare for. The description is the most terrifying possibility, a description of what it looks like, how it operates, how it feeds on the narrative. Knowledge is power, and perhaps the knowledge of this entity's nature is so potent that it makes the reader visible to the entity itself. Thorne didn't just stumble upon a secret. He made eye contact with it. The case remains officially open, a cold case gathering dust in a state records facility. But for us, and for those who look into the shadows of history, it is anything but cold. It is a living, breathing mystery. The missing pages from entry 734 are not just an absence of information. They are a presence, a deliberate gaping wound in our understanding of the world. They serve as a permanent reminder that not all history is written, and not all that is erased is truly gone. It leaves a scar. Aris Thorne believed something was consuming the past. If he was right, then the act of forgetting is not a passive process. It is an active hunt. And we are left with the ultimate, unsettling question. If this entity erases events, and people from the timeline, how would we ever know what we've already lost? The pages are still missing. The story is not over. And somewhere, in the quiet archives of the world, other numbers like 734 are waiting, holding secrets that are better left unread.